welcome. Thank you for coming. If you've never seen us do this before, I'm going to sit down and have a conversation with Russ. We ask that you hold your questions until the end of the conversation. We're going to talk about Russ's experience in the service. You ready?
Near as I will be.
Okay. Where'd you go to high school, Russ?
A lot of places.
Okay. Where'd you graduate from?
Edmiston.
Okay. And when was that?
Huh?
When was that?
1949.
Okay. When you graduated, did you immediately join the service?
No,
Okay, what'd you do?
I was working on a farm. I waited till they drafted me.
Okay. And when you got drafted, did you get drafted into the Army, into the Navy?
Army.
Army, okay. When'd you go?
Huh?
When did you go into the service?
Well, I went in April 15th, 1952.
Okay. So you had 3 years where you were working before you went into the service.
Yeah.
Okay. When you got into the service, where were you taken?
Well, they took me to Fort Devens, Massachusetts originally.
Okay.
From there, I went to Fort Dix, New Jersey
For your basic training?
for my basic training.
And what was that like? What was that like?
8 weeks of PhD.
8 weeks of phys ed. All right, so 8 weeks of phys ed. You graduated from your basic training. While you were there, did you see anybody that you knew?
In Fort Dix?
Yeah.
Yeah, a few.
Okay. Anybody you went to school with?
No,
Okay. You get out of Fort Dix, and where did you go next?
I went on TDY to Fort Monmouth. I was only there for a week.
Now, what's
Then I went
DD,
back to Fort Dix.
what's DDY?
Uh-huh.
What do you mean by DDY?
Well, we went up there for a week of more or less basic training.
Okay.
And
And then you come back to Fort
I
Dix.
Come back to Fort Dix, and we went to radio school there.
Okay.
Uh,
And what was radio school for folks that don't know?
Morse code,
Okay.
familiarity with the various radios that we used.
So you were going to be a signal guy.
Yep,
Okay. So when you were done, what was your rank?
private first class.
Private first class. Okay. You get done with there, what did you do? You graduate from radio school, that was what, about 15 weeks?
Yep. I got almost a month off, and then I headed for Seattle, Washington
Okay.
for a trip overseas to Japan.
Okay. How long were you in, so you went to Fort Lewis in Seattle. How long were you there?
Oh, seems like it was about 2 weeks.
Okay. So any training, or you just kind of hang out and wait until you go across?
We did a lot of hanging out and waiting.
How did you go overseas? Airplane or boat?
Boat
Okay. Where did the boat take you?
by Adak, Alaska, to let off some Air Force people,
Okay.
and then we went to Japan.
That seems like a long route to go to Japan.
Yeah. Well, being in Seattle, it wasn't that far north.
Do you remember how long that trip was?
My memory is a little bit short there. It's approximately 3 weeks.
Okay, so what was the boat? Were you someone that got seasick, or you enjoyed it?
Ooh. Most of us pulled details on the boat,
Okay.
one kind or another.
When you say details, so mopping the deck, KP duty, that kind of stuff?
Some of us mopped the decks, some of us carried up groceries from down at the bottom of the ship to the PX.
Okay.
If you want to call it a PX, it was a store on the ship.
Okay. When you got to Japan, what did you do?
I spent almost a week in Tokyo, and we got on a train and went to Mount Fuji.
Okay.
go timber.
I'm going to have you go forward a couple of slides. And what were you trained for there?
Radio operator.
Radio operator?
Yep.
Is that where you got ski training too, or no?
Well, I got ski training while I was in there,
Yeah.
but I
And
also got trained as a truck driver and got a license.
now you were driving truck before you went in the service, right?
With a radio in it,
Oh, okay.
in the back end.
Oh, okay. Okay. And is that where you got the bump on your noggin?
Yeah, eventually. That come along a little while later.
Okay. So while you were in Japan, did you run into anybody? Lester?
Oh, we had rifle training, more basic training. We operated radios and on that from our own company, really.
Okay. What were you doing work-wise while you were there?
Well, I drove truck out and parked it, got in the back end, operated radios,
Okay.
took other guys out, let them operate the radios.
Did you do any repairs or fixing of things while you were there?
No, not so much there.
Okay.
I did that more when I got in Korea.
Okay. How long were you in Japan?
About 6 months.
Okay. So you were there a pretty good amount of time. Did you get to go out and enjoy the sights or party at all?
Not very much.
No, but a little.
A little.
Did you get to go out and eat any of the food?
No, they kept us pretty busy.
Okay. Okay. When did you, you worked there for 6 months, and then you go to Korea. Where did you go to in Korea?
We flew into Busan
Okay.
and went into a ex-prison barracks.
Okay.
That's where we were stationed. And we did a little radio operating there. And we went up behind the lines in convoy. And that's where I got the scar across my head.
You want to tell that story?
I was riding in the back end of that three-quarter that had a plywood box on it and framed up with 2x4s. We had all of our baggage inside. There was 4 guys in the front end, and I got in the back end and went to sleep after a while. We got up the road a ways. While I was sleeping, one of the other guys was driving. They had a low limb that come out over the road, and it caught the top corner of that box. And it threw me up in the air. I 2x4 across there.
Did that get you any extra lunch or anything? Or
And they took me to the medics and got me some stitches, put me back in the truck, and I wouldn't get in the back end. I got right in the driver's seat. I drove the rest of the way.
All right. So, what else did you do while you were in Korea?
When we got caught up, had guys running the radios. We could talk from north of Seoul to Busan to our base camp, and on the radios. And when we got caught up, so the guys was playing around on the radios, I went into the wire section. They had some field wire they wanted to stretch and patch up where it would, wires were stripped from the insulation. We taped them up and just sat there and run the wire through our hand. We just found a rough spot, we fixed it.
When you say fixed it, just like electrical tape, you wrap it around?
Yeah,
Okay.
plastic tape.
Did you find the spot by getting zapped? Did you find the spot by getting zapped when you were
No.
touching live? Okay.
No, that was, the wire was disconnected.
Oh, okay.
We was just repairing
You
wires
didn't
that
do
they
the
had
tongue
picked up.
test? You didn't do the tongue test?
No,
When you would talk over the radios, what information were you relaying? Do you remember?
nothing drastic. You just wanted to know, what we were doing, where we were located. I can't remember the locations, but we was up on the side of a hill where we had to use a winch to get my truck up there. Then we strung a long wire antenna. Thought we was gonna have to use code. They got going and tried voice. And voice went right through just as good as code did. So we sat there and just talked with them. Visited back and forth. When the big guns went off, we kept quiet. They wouldn't have been able to hear us anyway. We could look out across the valley, see the guns when they fired, the barrel would come back. It was a lot of fun.
So that was where you did your ski training. What was your ski training like? What was your ski training? Have you ever skied before?
Very little.
Okay. And did they just put you up on top of the mountain and say go?
No, we was only, a third of the way up the mountain.
Did they still say just go?
Well, we went down hills.
And what was the purpose for that? Did they think that was something they were going to need you to do?
Well, never knew.
Okay.
Just a little more training.
You weren't ever part of the ski squadron?
No,
Did you take up skiing afterwards?
no,
All right. So, did you get any breaks while you were there? Any R&R?
yeah. About a month after we went ski training, I got a week of R&R. Went back to Tokyo. Two of my buddies that were in the same regiment in different battalions, and we met in Tokyo. Went around and saw a few of the sites.
Do you have any sites that really you remember being, no?
No, I don't remember too much about that.
And I got to go back a little bit. When you went home after basic for that month, that's when you married your wife, correct?
Right.
Okay.
Well, no, it was 2 weeks before I got my 30 days.
Okay.
I came home on a 3-day pass.
And then you got
We
to spend.
stopped at the Justice of the Peace. He says, I'm not trained for that. And we stopped at a minister's. He says, I can't do it. We finally ended up in Sydney, New York, at a church. We had my mother in the car with us and the couple that stood up with us. And we went into church and got married.
So just the 5 of you. So, did you take any other specialized training while you were there, in Japan or in Korea? Rifle.
Not too much. We did a little bit of radio repair work. Qualified on the range with 45. First one they gave me, you couldn't hit the broadside of the barn with it if you was inside. The door was shut. And I took it back to the officer that let me use it. Told him I couldn't hit nothing with it. He says, well, take it over to the supply and pick up another one. So I took it over to the supply, told him whose it was. He gave me another one. Of course, I had to clean it before I could shoot it. cleaned it up, qualified with it.
Had you been a hunter before you went in the service? Did you have experience?
Yeah, I done a little shooting before I went in.
So it wasn't user error with the first gun?
Huh?
It wasn't you being a bad shot with the first gun?
No. It wasn't me, it was the gun.
You spent a few months right at the 38th parallel or no?
Well, it did what?
You spent a few months right at the border, correct, or no?
Well, not a few months. We was up at the border for, we got up there about 10 o'clock at night, and we left the next day about 10 o'clock at night.
What were you up there for?
Repatriating the prisoners.
So when you say repatriating, you were doing a prisoner exchange, correct?
We took Korean and Chinese prisoners north, got them off the train, went through and made sure they was all off. Then we took on the American prisoners and brought them back down. They was all walking wounded. We didn't have any stretcher jobs or anything.
So they
like
were
that.
banged up, but they were capable of taking
All we
themselves.
had was the walking wounded.
How many people were in a train car, do you remember?
No, I can't remember.
Did you try to talk to any of the
20,
folks? Did you
30.
What, 30? Did you try to talk to any of the folks while they were in the train
No.
car? No. What about coming back? Did you try to talk to any of the?
You know, if they asked us questions, we answered them.
Okay.
Basically, that's all we could do.
Oh, so you weren't supposed to talk to them, or were you?
Well, going north, there wasn't any of them that spoke English. On the way back, they were just happy to be on the way home.
And when you got back, did you stay in the same barracks and bunks as those guys, or were they taken somewhere else?
They were in they're different barracks.
Okay. So they had to go through some form of,
We went back into the prison compound where we were stationed when we first got over there.
okay. Okay. Let's see. So what did you do? That was towards the end of your time in the service. Do you remember anything else about your time in Korea?
No, but I remember before we went to Korea, we took a little side trip from just outside of, where we were stationed on Mount Fuji. We took a side trip north on one of the main roads and got a map of all the bridges we went across, figured out how much or where we would put the dynamite to blow the bridges up in case they got invaded. We just figured out where we'd put the dynamite, and they took it to the next squad and they figured out how much of it would take.
So that was a training
We
you got?
spent a week doing that in Japan.
And that was basically in fear if they invaded and you had to run away, you wanted to stop them from moving?
While my guys were doing that, I was driving a Jeep back and forth carrying the mail from Busan to Seoul.
Do you remember how long of a drive that was?
Hmm?
Do you remember how long of a drive that was?
Down back in the day.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't a long drive.
Okay. So when you went home, did you take a trip home or did you take a boat?
We took a boat.
Did you have any stops on the way?
Yep. One guy on the boat, just before he got on the boat, got bit by a dog. They figured the dog might have rabies, so we'd drop him off in Hawaii. We went in the harbor and pilot boat come out, picked him up, we went back out.
Okay, so it wasn't a long stop in Hawaii, you didn't get to get off and have a few Mai Tais?
Nope, Ellie couldn't hardly see it.
All
My
right.
daughter can tell you more about Hawaii than I can. She spent 6 months over there. Her husband was in the service.
Okay. When you came back, where did you come into the States? Did you come back to Seattle or?
No, we came into San Francisco,
Okay, San Francisco.
under the Golden Gate Bridge.
Really?
Yeah,
And did you get to stay in San Francisco at all?
yeah, overnight.
Did you get to go out and have a good time at least in that one night?
No. We went into a big barracks and were seated all the way around the barracks and got our shots, got our paperwork for the trip home. They put us back on the bus and took us to the airport.
Oh, so you got to fly home this time?
I got to fly across the country,
Okay. And where did you fly into?
New Jersey.
So did you go back to Fort Dix or Fort Monmouth?
I believe we went back to Fort Dix.
Okay.
I was so excited about getting home, I don't remember where we got off.
So you didn't have to stay very long?
Huh?
You didn't have to stay very long to get discharged?
No,
And then how did you get
couple of
home?
days, got some shots.
You got a lot of shots coming back, didn't you?
We got shots everywhere.
And how did you get back home?
4 of us hired a taxi.
That must have been an expensive taxi ride.
It was an expensive taxi ride, but when you divide it 4 ways, it wasn't bad.
Okay. And you all were from roughly the same area?
Yeah.
Okay. And the cab driver was probably happy?
They came into Binghamton,
Okay.
the taxi.
And then did you go into Binghamton and get picked up from there?
No, I had arrangements with my father-in-law.
Okay.
He come down to Binghamton and picked me up.
Okay. All right. Anything else you want to add?
That about covers it.
You okay with answering some questions?
I'll try.
Folks have questions?
I have one. What did you used to write to Mom when you would go out, the guys were all going out drinking? What did you always write? I'd rather have a glass of what?
I don't really know.
I think you said in one of your letters that you'd rather have a glass of milk than the beer. And she told that story often.
Would you rather have milk than beer? Would you rather have milk than beer?
No, not really.
That might have been a letter for Mom and not a letter
That's not the same.
I kind of like the beer.
Were you a smoker at all when you were in the service?
Yeah, I started again.
In
I
the service?
quit before I went in.
Well,
But when we was in basic training, when we was in radio school, got a smoke break every hour.
oh.
If they come along, you wasn't smoking, they had a detail for you. They kept it up. So after about the second week, I started smoking again.
Yeah, that seems like a disadvantage to all the non-smokers. So you weren't someone that traded your cigarettes for something else then? You weren't someone that traded your cigarettes for something else then?
No.
Okay. Other questions?
When did you stop smoking?
Can't hear you.
When did you stop smoking?
Well, just before I went to work for the gas company. I worked for them for 40 years.
That seems like a logical decision.
When I got home, I went back into the print shop where I was just before I went in. And I worked in the print shop, run the die cutter, run a print press, jab press, flatten press. And I started with a paper similar to the penny saver. I didn't make out too good on that. I run it for almost 3 months. Didn't have money enough to pay for the postage permit to start the next year. So I give it up. Ultimately, well, I worked for another print shop, just doing job work for 6 months or so. And they called me, wanted me to go to work for the gas company. Well, I worked on construction for, my brother was working on construction. He stayed at my house. I took him to Utica to catch a ride on one of the trucks that was going to work. They'd all left. So I took him up to the foot of the Adirondack Mountains. He was doing right away for Route 81, north of Syracuse, up around Adams, putting in some right-of-way fence. We worked there till they got that fence all up, and they sent us to another job. I worked on construction for, close to 10 years, I think.
Worked a long time then.
Then I went to work for the gas company, driving truck.
Any other questions for us?
Did you learn any Korean word or Japanese word?
Did you learn any Korean or Japanese language words?
Just a little bit, nothing serious.
What were they, do you remember?
Pipe dozo.
Do you want to tell us?
Well, good to say.
Do you want to tell us what those mean? Are we going to get in trouble if we learn?
No, those are nice words.
Oh. There was some hands raised in the back.
During your being on the radio, were you in the combat zones where there was fire going on, or were you located outside of that and the Marines or the Army were moving off in different directions?
We were right at the rear of the combat zone. We was probably 8 or 10 miles behind the line. And I operated a radio for our company commander. One day we went up towards the line, but we didn't get that far. They had the road blocked.
You could
Our
hear
guys
it.
had the road blocked.
You could probably hear some of the,
We could hear some of the guns going off. Well, while we was 10 miles behind the line, we could hear some of the guns going off. We was up on the side of this hill, and you could look out across the valley, see the guns when they shot. And you see the barrel come back, dump the empty out. Guys would throw another one in. But they didn't all fire. Most of the time it was bang, 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 bang. I don't know what good they were doing. They couldn't see where the bullets were landing.
Any other questions?
Hi, Russ. I have 2 questions, but the first one is, did anyone tell you what all these shots were for?
Did anyone what?
Did anyone tell you what the shots you were getting, the medical shots,
Oh,
what they were for?
most of the time, yes. we knew ahead of time what we was gonna be getting.
And my second question is, it's not too many years between the Korean War and World War II, not too many decades, actually. So we must have been friends with the Japanese enough to stay there for 6 months?
So she's saying after World War II, we had a relationship with Japan. Yes, that
Must
is the
be.
case, yeah.
Yeah. You know, it wasn't, you weren't just passing through Japan, you stayed there for 6 months, you said. So they must have allowed that.
Yeah.
We stayed in Japan.
Had friendly feelings for us.
Basically, that was more training.
Right, right, you said.
Was there any bad blood between the Japanese? Did you ever run into trouble?
No. Never had a problem. I could leave my wallet, the change laying on the bar, go to the bathroom, and when I come back, it was gonna be there.
Did you, while you were over there, did you make friends with any Japanese or Chinese that were in the area?
2 or 3. We was about 2 miles out of Gotemba, and we used to go to town generally on a weekend.
And drink
They
milk?
didn't do too much drinking on the weekends. We more or less had the weekends to ourselves. We could sit in the barracks and play cards or read books, or we wanted to go into town, we'd go into town and have a couple of 3 beers and go home. Yeah, go home, go back to the barracks.
Any other questions?
Was the weather terribly cold in Korea? Where was,
It wasn't as cold as we've had the last 3 days.
okay. Good example.
It was below 0. They had a little snow. We didn't get an awful lot, and normally it didn't last too long. When we went up skiing, they had a little snow up there.
I have to ask, so when I was a kid and I learned to ski, you were taught your feet straight or french fries, that means you're gonna go fast, and you turn your skis in to make a slice of pizza to slow you down?
Snowplow.
All right, so you guys learned the same way. That logic hasn't changed, just how they deliver the method.
Go uphill, you walk like this, with your feet apart, so the tail of your ski wouldn't one up and catch on the other one when you started to stack.
Okay.
Did you get any awards or just anyone saying thank you for what you did from your officers?
Try again.
Did you get any awards or just a thank you from your officers from what you did for them?
No, I operated radio for a lot of officers. Different times. Company commander, regimental commander. I was in headquarters company. And the regimental headquarters was where we happened to be staying. We worked for all of them. I remember I got on the regimental net one day. The guy went to lunch, and he told him he was going to lunch. So I went in, sat down and listened to the radio for him. And the guy started sending with a bug. Now, a bug is one of those things where you just touch the button in it, send us a code. And finally I broke in on him, told him to clean his antenna. He was sending too fast. I could take 18 words a minute, but he was sending about 25.
Wow.
He was a high-speed operator.
Did you personally know anyone who had been killed in the Korean War?
Hmm?
Did you know anybody that died in combat during the war?
I did at the time, but I don't remember any of the names. It's been a long time.
What year did you leave the Army?
Well, I had a 8-year commitment when I went in.
Okay.
I came off from active duty the 15th of April, 1954, and I got discharged in 1960.
Wow.
So did you keep doing reserves until then?
Hmm?
You were in the reserves until then? Did you get any training after 1954? Were you in the reserves? Did you do more training or just?
I was in the reserves.
Yeah.
We had a combat company, regimental combat company, that started up in Norwich. And I was with them for the 6 years I was in. 2 weeks in the summertime, we'd go to Camp Drum or Fort Belvoir, Virginia, an army camp somewhere. We went to Fort Belvoir, run road grader, steam shovel.
Any other questions?
Built Bailey Bridge down there. Built a floating bridge on boats.
Like a
A
pontoon
whole
bridge?
bunch of boats like parked like this, and road going over the top of them. They even let us drive across it.
I think you're off the hot seat.
I'm tired of talking to somebody else's turn.
Thank you, Russ.